When it comes to yarn, I usually purchase mine from one of two places, Spotlight or the Op Shop. When it comes to thrifting, it tends to be a bit of a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get. Spotlight, on the other hand, has a decent variety of yarns, but in all my time crocheting, I haven't actually sampled many of them. I tend to just stick to my go-tos, which is the Four Seasons Marvel 8-ply and 12-ply, occasionally dabbling in the Spot Saver or the Flinders Cotton. So I'm starting a new series where I crochet exclusively with Spotlight yarns, documenting my thoughts and feelings along the way, and giving a more thorough overview or review at the end. I should clarify, at the end of each video, not at the very end of the series. Our first volunteers in this new series is the Value Ball Blankie Glitter, the Value Ball Blankie Ombre, and the Value Ball Tiny Treasures. I have not worked with any of these yarns before. If past experience is anything to go by, I'm probably not going to enjoy this thicker blanket yarn kind of stuff, but I'm going to do my best to put my biases aside and try and remain as objective as possible. First things first, I need to know what size hook I need. This says 8mm, but honestly looking at it, I'm thinking I might bump that up to either a 9 or a 10, because the project I have in mind, it's actually just a really simple, straightforward project. I'm going to make a granny square blanket, and I will be making that for my youngest niece. She is going through her phase at the moment where she likes playing with her dolls, and one of the things she likes doing with them is making them have sleepovers, putting them to bed, and for that she needs her blankies. I'm going to crochet the blanket itself with these two, just alternating rows, but this one I'm going to do a little border or a trim at the end when I'm finished. What should we go with first? Maybe this one. So first things first, can I do a center pull? The most important question. And then the second part to that question is, if I can do a center pull, will it be a clean center pull, or am I going to get yarn vomit everywhere? No. Oh, that wasn't recording, you didn't see. But there we go, that's what I got. So that was pretty good. Center pull worked fairly well. Now, the first thing I notice with this yarn is that it's a bit coarser than, I think the one that I was kind of comparing it to in my head was one of the Bernat blanket yarns. So I haven't used that in a few years, so it is possible I'm misremembering. Compared to that, this feels much coarser to me, but with the caveat that this does have glitter in it. So that might be contributing to the coarser feel, the coarser texture. Other than that, it doesn't feel too bad. I don't think I'm gonna hate working with it from a sensory perspective, at least not yet. I'm going to start with my magic circle. I'll try the 9 first, and I just remembered magic circle, no go with this. Let me use my chunky yarn method. If only I had a bit of scrap yarn that was long enough. That should do. So we're going to start up. Oh no, what am I doing? I'm making a granny square, not a traditional magic circle. So I think the 9 hook is all right. So I am unaccustomed to working with a hook of this size. And then I should be able to just pull on the ends of my acrylic yarn, and the magic circle tightens up. So yeah, this hack is invaluable. With chunky yarn, if you want to make a magic circle, that's the best thing for it. Now, round 1, not too bad. Make sure I've got all my clusters that I need. And then I'm going to change colour for round 2. Where did I put the other yarn? Oh. It's like literally 2 seconds ago. How can I have lost it already? But this one, I don't know if it's because of the lack of glitter, but this yarn feels much softer, quite like this one. Well, the feel of it's all right. Bit of a yarn vomit there. Working with it may be a completely different story. You know, I should have actually checked that if they use the same size hook. I just assumed they did because they were both the blanky yarns, but yeah, that's 8mm. That's 8mm. I mean, I'm using a size up from both of those anyway, but just can't hurt to double check. Oh, and then I think I'm going to just do one more round today, because as I feel like I've said in the last 10 videos, still have shoulder issues, so I can't crochet like for long stretches. I've got to break up my crochet throughout the day in about segments of 15-20 minutes. And that's round 3 all done. So that'll be it for me for today. I mean, so far, so good. Like I mentioned at the start, I do have some bias going into this because I'm not the biggest fan of working with the chunky yarns, but that looks okay. And so far, for the first 3 rounds, it hasn't been too awful to work with. So I can't ask for much more than that. Don't really have too many more thoughts on the yarns at the moment, just because I think I need to give them a fair chance. I need to work with them for a bit longer than I currently have. I will need to take care of this end before I forget to. I don't want my magic circle to unravel. I went into this project fully prepared to dislike this yarn, just because the bulky, chunky, or super bulky / chunky stuff is not my favorite yarn to work with. If you've been on the channel for any length of time, you know that. But I found that this yarn actually has an advantage over the other chunky stuff I've used. So the Premier Parfait Chunky, that's from another project I'm working on. I can't remember the specific yarn, but it was a Banat yarn. There's a couple of other, sort of, you know, the chunky, the plushy yarns that I've worked with before. The issue with those is that they tend to shed like mad. You get fluff everywhere. It flies in your mouth, it flies in your eyes. It ends up all over your floor, so it looks like it's been covered in rainbow snow. And that is one of the reasons that I don't enjoy working with this yarn. But so far, I have had absolutely zero shedding from this. It hasn't disintegrated everywhere. It hasn't, you know how sometimes with those yarns, the fibers will kind of split apart and you'll end up with the center thread exposed. That hasn't happened once, even when I've had to frog a couple of stitches. So while I still don't particularly enjoy working with this yarn, at this stage I'm reluctantly impressed by this one, especially the ombre one. What was this one called? This was just the blanky glitter. This one, it does feel a lot rougher, a lot coarser than this one. I believe I mentioned that earlier too. And I think it is simply because of the glitter. But this one's not too bad. So far, it is high on my list of favorite chunky yarns to work with, which that was an unexpected surprise. Did not think that was going to happen. It's actually made this project a lot nicer to work on than I thought it was going to be. Thought I'd have to sort of power my way through it, just keep thinking in my head that my niece, she is gonna love it. But I haven't had to really motivate myself like that this time around, which is good. Hopefully those trends stay true. I would like to keep having a good experience with this yarn, but I'm just going to continue crocheting in the round, doing my granny stitch until I've used up both of these yarns. Once I reach that point, I am going to add where did I put that other yarn? Oh, right here. I am going to add the border with this, and we'll see how this one crochets up. After a few weeks of work, I've managed to make a decently sized blanket, but I have now reached what I like to call the finish or frog point. What I mean by that is I have a little bit of each skein left, and I do plan to continue crocheting, but if I don't manage to finish it, I will be forced to frog it. I'm thinking the next row will need to be the ombre yarn. I'm thinking I will have enough of this left to crochet one more round, but I definitely don't have enough to do a final round in the blanky glitter, but there's a decent amount left. Here's my thought. I will do one more round in the ombre and just keep my fingers crossed, pray to the crochet gods that I do have enough yarn to finish the entire thing. Once I've completed that, I might do a round of, say, just single crochet around the edge of my blanket in the blanky glitter just to finish that off, and I'll treat that as like some sort of border or a border foundation, because then I'm going to come in with my tiny treasures yarn that I've got and create an actual border using, I don't know, a shell stitch or a picot stitch. I'll do something a little bit, I was going to use the word fancy, but I don't think fancy is quite the right word. I'm just going to be using a bit of a different stitch to give it a little bit of texture on the border. No matter what I do, my 2-year-old niece is not going to care. She's just going to be focusing on the blankie as a whole. So that's how I'll finish off. And then if I have enough yarn left, which I imagine I should do, I might make her a little matching pillow or something to use up the rest of this yarn. Let's get started on this final round of ombre yarn. Please send thoughts and prayers to the crochet gods that I actually have enough for this. And we made it, and look at that. Plenty of yarn to spare. I don't know what you guys are worried about. Let's just hope we're going to have the same luck with this one. I think we should, but I'm not the best judge of these things. I've never been able to sort of accurately guesstimate how far a partial skein of yarn will go, but I think we'll be all right. So I'm just going to, well, I need to take a break first because I can't keep crocheting at the moment, but then I'm going to add just a single crochet border around here with the blanky yarn, and upon that I'm going to build my trim, whatever that ends up being. Oh, I'm really tempted to do some more, but I know I'll risk buggering up my shoulder. I've been making such good progress, I don't want to do that. No more, Lee, walk away. I think we're just gonna make it. 3 single crochet to go. 1, 2, 3, and oh, tangled. And slip stitch to finish. Fantastic. We won at Yarn Chicken today, my friends. We won. Check it out. Well, that is technically the final round of the blanket itself. All I need to do now is to add the trim, the border, for which I have the Tiny Treasures yarn. I'm thinking maybe shell stitch. I'll alternate between like a shell stitch and either a slip stitch or a single crochet and just make my way around the entire border of the blanket here. Fun stuff, let's go. I might weave this end in first, however. At this point, I have finished the blanket, which Oh, this has been such a long process. It's taken me, 3 months to complete this entire thing. But apparently I've decided to drag the process out even further because I have quite a bit of yarn left and I don't have anything else in mind that I want to use it for. So I want to try something new on this blanket just to add a little bit of accent to the border. And done. Finally. Where did I put my scissors? Why am I always losing my scissors? Why is it them in particular? I need to get 2 pairs so I can keep one here and one over there. Got them. And now I can finally finish off this project. I'll have to weave in a couple of ends, but I can do that. I can do that later. I'm sure all of you know what that looks like. So here we are. Doll blanket for my niece. All finished using yarns that I had never worked in before this. And I suppose that segues nicely into what did I think of these 3 yarns. The blanky glitter, the blanky ombre, and the tiny treasures. And to be honest, I can say, no bullshit, that these 2 yarns, out of all the chunky / bulky yarns that I have used so far, these were easily my favorites. They definitely had some advantages over yarn I'd used previously, such as I have an example right here, the Premier Parfait Chunky. They didn't shed for one, which is amazing. I have not found a single hairball of this yarn floating around anywhere on my floor. All I have to do is just cut this and the fluff goes explosion. Fluff explosion. It flies everywhere. But with this, I didn't have that issue at all, which I am pretty impressed by. Secondly, the fibers themselves didn't bunch. Another problem that I've run into with yarns like this is that occasionally, if you have to frog your stitches or when you're sewing pieces to amigurumi, the fibers themselves will separate and they will leave the central thread exposed. That did not happen once in this case, and I did have to frog a few stitches. I made a couple of silly mistakes, but even when I had to do that, the fibers did not separate. Obviously, I haven't tested this on amigurumi, so maybe the more rigorous sewing on of pieces would make a difference in that regard, but I don't know. I don't have any of this yarn left to test that out. But in my experience with this, that didn't happen once. So again, I am impressed with that. And just in general, it was, well, in particular, the blanky ombre, it was a nicely textured yarn to work with. The one downside for me personally was that I had to use the 9mm hook. For me, at the moment, my sweet spot of hooks is about, I'd say, a 4mm to a 5.5mm. Anything too large or too small hurts my hands, or it does over an extended period of time. So while I didn't particularly enjoy using the larger 9mm hook for this, I acknowledge that that's very much a me problem. For anyone else who is using this yarn, that may not be such a concern. But for me, using the 9mm hook was definitely leaning more towards the con side in the pros and cons column. The blanky glitter yarn, I didn't enjoy working with that quite as much, just because I found the texture a lot coarser, and I do believe that's down to just the simple fact that it contains glitter. One advantage though that it does have over other yarns that I've used that included glitter was the way it's sort of incorporated into this. It's like little tiny, let me bring this up to the camera so you can see. There's bits of glitter that seem to be like attached to that central thread that runs through the chunky yarn, whereas glitter yarns that I've used previously have a continuous thread of like glitter throughout, and I've always found them to be very, very annoying because they either snap, they come away from the the fiber threads and they tangle around your hook, they tangle around your other stitches, and just overall they were very unpleasant to work with. I think the last time I worked with them was in my Christmas challenge last year of 2023. It was a very frustrating experience, but I'm glad to say that that did not happen at all in this case. So it's sort of a little bit of a trade-off. You get that slightly rougher, what was that? I don't know, something just fell onto the floor, but it's sort of a trade-off. You get the slightly coarser texture. It's nothing too bad, but it is noticeable as compared to like the Blanky Ombre, which does not have glitter. But in return, it's a lot easier to work with than the glitter yarns I have used previously. So overall, when it comes to physically working with these yarns, I would give the Blanky Glitter and the Blanky Ombre a thumbs up, and would recommend them to anyone who does like using, say, where did I put it? Right here. Who likes using yarns like the Premier Parfait Chunky, any of those yarns that sort of fall into the chunky / bulky, plushy yarn category. I would recommend them. However, that might be a bit of a problem because I just tried to double check these yarns on the Spotlight website before starting to film this segment, just because I wanted to make sure I got the details right if I needed them, and just to check out any other information I thought might be relevant. However, I could not find them. I guess that means my recommendation comes with a bit of a caveat. I would recommend them if you can get your hands on them. One thing I do remember though from when I originally saw them on the Spotlight website when I purchased them was that the colour selection was very poor. I think each of the yarns, so the Blanky Ombre and the Blanky Glitter, only had 4 colour choices each. They were something like purple, blue, yellow, and pink, I believe. So while I do enjoy working with them and would recommend them, again, if you can get your hands on them, you're going to be limited in the colours that you're able to choose from. If it's the same, if the yarn ever comes back onto the Spotlight website, if it's the same as it was before, because yes, there were only 4 colours each, which in my opinion is a strike in the con column, because just 4 colours of yarn, I think you need to have a little bit more variety than that. Now that we've got those 2 yarns out of the way, what did I think of my third and final yarn, which was the Valuable Tiny Treasures? This one I didn't enjoy as much. Like with the other 2, the pros definitely were that it didn't shed, it didn't do the splitty separatey thing, which is always a positive in my book. However, this one wasn't as enjoyable to work with. It's got a slick, almost oily feel to it. It is a 100% polyester yarn, so perhaps that could be part of the reason why. But it's just one of those yarns that I don't like the texture of. And again, that could be down to like my personal sensory issues rather than an overarching problem. But I just didn't enjoy the texture of this one when I was working with it. And it's also one of those yarns that is, you get some yarns that they're slippery. That's the best word I can use to describe it. Your hook sort of slips in it. It's easy to accidentally pull out stitches. So if you take your hook out for a second, say for example, to put your stitch marker back in, the stitches come out very, very quickly, very, very easily. Perhaps that slickness of the yarn I was talking about that contributes to that. I'm not sure, but it's a texture of yarn I don't particularly like, but trying to set that aside a bit and remain as objective as I possibly can, it was an okay yarn to work with. I didn't have too many issues other than the yarn being a little bit slippery and tricky and getting away from me a couple of times. So would I recommend the Tiny Treasures yarn? It's hard to say a definitive yes or no. If you're like me and you have some sensory issues with the textures, or you don't like the slippery yarns, perhaps not. But if you're someone who those things don't tend to bother, you could give it a go. I would probably recommend it in that situation. As I said, it worked up fine other than those couple of things. Unfortunately, like with the other 2, I could not find this again on the Spotlight website. I don't know why these yarns go up and then disappear so quickly. Perhaps as I continue this series, I will remember to screenshot the page when I purchase them. That might save. Thank you, Windows. Do I really need to update now? Yep. I see all your notifications. Stop yelling at me. What was I saying? before Windows interrupted me with the millionth bloody update this week. What I think I was on about was that, yeah, Spotlight no longer has this listed on their website either, so I can't get any additional information for you guys. But if you're interested, you can check the website out periodically and it might come back up. Who bloody knows? But there's not much I can do about that right now. Let's just leave it on overall. I had a positive experience with this project. Made even more positive by the fact that I'm going to give this to my niece. I've just got to finish up here, weave in a few ends, and then it'll be good to go. Speaking of good to go, yes, that works as a segue, we are going to do... And today's featured creator only hookup is Smurf or Lady Bear, and she says, I'm a stay-at-home mama to 2 wonderful kiddos and married to a truck driver. My grandma taught me how to knit and crochet as a kid, but I didn't pick it up until after my son was born in 2015, and kind of self-taught as well, teaching myself how to make plushies and clothes. I started making shoulder bags and blankets when I picked up crocheting in 2015/2016. That seems to be a very common thing among crocheters from what I've seen. You either A, learn from your grandma, or B, you're self-taught. Sometimes there's a bit of overlap, but it's usually one of those two things, at least from what I've seen, like in the hookup. So if you would like to check out Smurf or Lady Bear's links, they will all be down in the description, and so will the link to a Google form if you'd like to apply for the hookup for yourself and show off your crochet creations, or any of your other creations for that matter. One more thing before we go. If you are someone who shops at Spotlight or has access to a Spotlight store, have you ever come across this yarn? And the second part of that question is, have you worked with it yourself? So the blanky glitter, the blanky glitter, the blanky ombre. And if you had, what did you think of it? Because that was the first time I'd ever seen it when I purchased it. And as demonstrated before, I haven't seen it since. So I'd just be interested to hear anyone else's opinions if they had a chance to form them before it disappeared. So let me know what you think, if you can. Thank you all very much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. And I will see you in the next one.
Start big.
And open.
I'm spider.
You want the spider. I spent all this time making your blanket and you want the spider.
Yeah.
That one's got pins in it. You can have one of those spiders over there.
Mom, there's one.
But that's got sharp pins in it. You gotta have that one over there.
There's one big.
Well, you don't have to have the big one. You can have that one. No, they're too sharp.
This is right. It's new and right. Maybe there is something on it.